Hey, how's it going, guys? My name's Chris, and today we're going to be watching this video about the Labor's super tax on unrealized capital gains over $3 million. Or if you have a capital amount over $3 million, any gains in that year, you will be taxed even if you don't sell, which is insane. And the implications of this are going to be massive for Australia if this goes ahead, because the amount of people that will just move money out of Australia will be huge, and the amount of people that will take money out of super, like, instead of allocating money to super, we'll allocate it to other things that just send money overseas, which at the end of the day, probably a good amount of super is going overseas anyway. But let's
So
go.
I received a text last night, interestingly enough, and unsolicited and more random than anything, from Jeff Wilson. And
I was going to say Clive Palmer for a second. But,
I've got a few of those. Yes, I have had a few of those. Trumpet a Patriot ones. No, but I received a text from Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson runs a fund, and he's a very successful guy here in Sydney. And he sent me a copy of a paper about unrealised gains, capital gains in super funds, and the proposed tax on those gains. And I thought, wow, that's, knowing I was seeing you today, that is a really important point I need to put to you. And I said to Jeff I would put it to you. He's a good friend of mine. I said I'd put it to you. And he's actually prepared a white paper on it, or his organisation prepared a white paper on it, which I might actually send over to you. And
Sure.
But where everyone's forgotten about this. I think the amount is $3 million. If you have in your super fund, because you've worked hard and you've been able to contribute over a million years, enough money to get over $3 million worth of assets, but you haven't sold them, they're just valued at that. Under the proposal by the Labor Party, which is what Jeff was bringing to my attention last night again, was that you'll be paying tax on that. And I don't know how you pay tax on an unrealised gain. I don't know where you get the money from to pay tax on something that's unrealised, because you don't have the cash, because you haven't realised the gain. What's the position of the Liberal Party, of the coalition, on this stuff?
So, Mike, we opposed it straight away when the government proposed it, and they've tried now, I think, to sort of push the boundaries on this. They've done research on abolition of negative gearing and cutting out the discount on capital gains tax on the sale of an asset held for longer than 12 months as well. So I think there is a broader issue here of credibility. So the Prime Minister went to the last election saying no changes to super tax, and of course this change then came in. And I equate it to, if you're a wage earner, if you're a tradie or you are working for a boss, it's like charging you tax, like you're having to pay the tax office the tax before you get paid your wage for that week. And if you're in a super fund and you've got a farm in that super fund, which many rural families do, or if you're a family, maybe second, third generation family with a block of shops or a couple of units, or if you've got shares that have just done really well, you've picked a couple of cracking shares that have taken off. For that 12-month period, you might have seen an increase in value in the block of flats or in the price of your shares. You haven't realised the gain. So if the price has gone from $1 up to $5, you're taxed on that capital gain, and the next 12 months, the shares might come back. There might be a crash. The valuation that you've had to pay for again for the building that you've got in your super fund might show that prices have come off, or perhaps you've got vacancies and the yield's gone down in relation to the shops that you've got.
It could be a recession.
It could be anything, right? You could have a...
Yeah, exactly. It's a stupid. Well, it's not stupid, right? But it's just a tax grab, right? And yes, it will affect the wealthy to an extent until they move all their money to offshore accounts. The thing is, with people that make enough, they can hire the good lawyers, the good accountants to make legal loopholes so that they avoid these taxes, right? So what this ends up doing is taxing the everyday mum and pop investor that have actually been smart with their money, put it into super, or if they do end up doing it on like non-super assets. So like, they've invested in shares, they've invested in real estate. Like, although, yeah, there is a problem at the moment with everything being overvalued, especially real estate, and being unaffordable for the general people, and that needs to be addressed. But what this would do would crash the market, and the people that aren't even investors, that just live in their house, that have put, just a 10% deposit down, and then 6 months later, the market goes down 50%. They're in the hole. They still owe that money to the bank, and their house is not valued that anymore. So, in my opinion, it's a fucking money grab, and it's not going to affect the super wealthy. It's going to affect your average Joe, like, more than it's going to affect the super wealthy. So, it's not a realistic strategy, and it's going to cause a lot of problems.
A development application that's...
And like, honestly, what it does is disincentivizes hard work and investing. And at the moment, Australia needs investing in industries and employment and work, because over half our GDP, I'm pretty sure, is fucking just real estate increases. So that's not real
approved.
wealth.
You've sunk a lot of money into getting the development application, and it increases the price of the block of land that you're holding or whatever it is. You're going to pay tax under Labor's model, and it raises a few $1 billion, so they know that it's really going to hurt. And if you're in a super fund and you haven't got much cash in the super fund,
see, that's fucked, right? Like if you have a property and then you developed on it, of course the property value is going to go up, but you've actually put money into it. So do they take that into consideration? Potentially, because it's part of the profit, but I don't know, like you have to sell it to realize the profit. So technically the cost doesn't associate with the building, like the unrealized, I don't know, like it doesn't make fucking sense.
if you are a farmer, for example, and you've got limits as to how much money you can put on, depending on how old you are, as to how much money you can put into that fund, you might be forced into a position where you've got to sell the asset to pay the tax bill. And I just think it's unjust and it's unfair. And
but it's also nonsense.
Well, it absolutely it is. But it captures, like people might say now, $3 million in your super fund if only. But this will capture with inflation people over the coming years. It's not indexed, so the $3 million doesn't go up each year. So this will capture more and more taxpayers each year. And as I say, if you've inherited some money and you've put it into your super, or you've just listened to the financial advisors who have said, okay, pile as much money as you can into super because it's a safe asset class, you're now going to come within scope over the course of the next few years. And like we've fought really hard against this. Labor and the Greens strongly support it. And again, I think it gives a window into Labor's thinking. It's that we can take money away from you because we think you've done too well. And that's sort of the socialism that's at the heart of the operation of Labor and Greens parties, that it's wealth redistribution. And Jeff Wilson, who I know well also, one of the smartest financial minds in the country, he's horrified by all of this, and most financial advisors are.
Paul Keating be horrified by it.
Paul Keating would be. He wouldn't recognise it in terms of what the Labor Party is proposing here. And it provides a disincentive as well, because a lot of financial advisors will be saying to younger people, look, actually, I wouldn't be putting that much money into super now because it's just risky. We don't know whether the $3 million is going to be brought down.
Yeah, that's the whole point of super. Is supposed to be this safe thing that's, a tax haven in a sense. So it should be a way to grow your wealth within limits, which, are set out. So that stops it from being abused overly. But however, once again, I'm pretty sure, people that are starting out work now, at 18, they'll eventually earn 100K a year. So they're putting 10K a year into super. If they're working 50 years of their life or 40 years of their life, the likelihood of them having a $3 million super balance by the time they retire is fucking high. It is very, very high. So it's just a money grab, and it's ridiculous that this was even suggested. And it does show a lot about what the Labor Party's mottos are. But I'm not saying Liberal was even in the running for this election. However, I think both parties are fucking stuffed. They're not really looking after the normal Australian, and it's crap system that we're in at the moment. But it is what it is. That's what I just keep going on about. It is what it is, and just work your fucking ass off. And by the looks of it, you might have to somehow figure out how to get the money outside of Australia so that you're not taxed on it. But I'm pretty sure we got a pretty aggressive tax system where it's hard to do that, right? You really need to be wealthy and have those smart-minded people, those people that do this as a living, tax evasion, but not tax evasion. So you sort of need those people on your side, but most of us can't afford them.
Labor needs to create more tax and more revenue. Maybe they'll drop the $3 million down to $2 million and you'll be captured by that. So the whole idea of super is that it's a safe place to invest and it's going to provide for your retirement. But if you take away that certainty, younger people are just going to say, well, actually, no, I'm not going to tip money into super. And, we sold.
And that's the other thing then. If more people aren't putting money into super at the end of their life, working life, it's going to be a bigger tax burden on the government, right? It's going to be a bigger burden because these people have been disincentivized to put money in super to self-fund their retirement.
A car or a boat, instead of spending that money, we're going to dump it into super. Those people stop doing that. And I think that's, I think that is a really bad outcome. Not enough people are talking about it. And as I say, it also then says, well, if Anthony Albanese told you before the last election that there were not going to be any tax changes around super, he's saying the same thing now around the family home. But we know that they've done the work on what negative gearing abolition looks like and what the abolition of the CGT 50% discount looks like as well. So that I think gives a window into the thinking of the Labor Party, and they'll always want to tax more because they always want to spend more. But that's what puts interest rates up as well.
I hope you don't mind if I don't want to labour this point, but it's quite important to someone like me. I think about the kids, the 20-year-old kids. Let's call them even the 15-year-old kids, but maybe they're not voting. But let's say your grandkids or my grandkids, in my case, or I could be thinking about young people who are just turning 20, getting the first job. They're going to work for 45 years.
Yes.
And they're going to be putting the money into this great thing that, look, let's give it to Keating. Great thing that Keating came up with in the 90s. The great thing. And it's about building up enough wealth so you can retire comfortably. Because every Australian works their butt off and they deserve to retire comfortably.
100%.
And the whole regime about this is having concessional tax rates on your super fund and the money the super fund made. That's the whole premise. A kid who's 20 in 45 years' time will probably will have to have more than $3 million worth of assets to be able to live comfortably.
No doubt about that.
And so that person right now want to get their act together and think about what they're going to do, because if this goes through, this is an existential threat to what was originally designed by Jim Chalmers' greatest person in his life, Paul Keating. And I just can't believe that they're actually even talking about it or considering it. Is this a real risk of getting a pass by through Parliament?
Well, yes. And again, it wasn't, nothing was mentioned about it before the election. It's one of the key broken promises. And to your point too, which I think is really well made, that the reason that we've got a concessional taxation arrangement, that is people paying lower tax in super when the money's compounding and you're earning and building that nest egg up, is because it's your money ultimately. Whilst the boss takes it out before you see it and sends it off to your super fund, it's your money and you can't access it. So the price that we as a government are saying to you for putting that money aside, not being able to use it to buy a boat or go on a holiday or whatever it might be, is that we're going to tax you at a lower rate because we want you to be self-sufficient in retirement, because we've got an ageing population, more people on pensions. And your point is spot on, where you've worked your guts out your whole life. We want you to be able to enjoy your retirement, and super is part of the way in which you're going to be able to do that. But the government just upends all of that logic and thinking that Keating first had in mind, and it's just a tax grab. And it's even worse than that, because you're saying to somebody, okay, we're going to have to pay a valuer during the course of every financial year to work out whether the asset's gone up or down during the course of that year.
Do they understand the cost of valuers for real estate? They charge a percentage of the valuation.
Like thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's fucking insane. For real estate in particular, like houses are, like the median house is in like New South Wales is $1 million. In Queensland, it's like 800, 900,000. So let's just call it $1 million, right? In the next couple of years, every state's going to be $1 million minimum, right? Medium. $1 million on 1%. Fuck, that's so much money. Like a 1%. Like that might be the career to go to, right? Is be a valuer. Like you will make a fuck ton of money if this thing goes through, right? And there'll be no shortage of work, right? Every end of financial year, you'll be pumping money. Like those jobs will probably end up getting paid. Like you'll probably start getting paid $200,000 a year to be a valuer in real estate. It'll be insane. And you might think, well, what's this also going to do is it's going to increase the super costs of the super managing funds, right? Like, because when you put your money into super, they buy shares, they buy real estate, they buy everything, right? And if they're buying real estate, well, then they're going to need real estate valuers. So that's going to increase the management costs of these super funds, which is already probably too high for a lot of these funds. Like heaps of them are fucking a complete rip-off. Some are not too bad, but they're all going to be rip-offs then after this. So this, like, I don't know how easily this could pass government. I know like Labor is a pretty large majority. So if this is how all Labor Party members think, then this will probably go through pretty fucking easily. And it's just going to put everything to shit, which is insane. It's insane that this is even a possibility of happening.
The valuers will be happy because they're going to be paid to do these desktop audits or whatever. I don't know the level of detail. The government hasn't released how much money you'd have to spend in an average super fund to comply with the new change. And there are, as I say, like you get fluctuations in different assets that you've got in your superannuation, whether it's shares or whether it's real property or whatever it might be. So I think there's a real problem here, and I think it shows the difference between the two parties. The Liberal Party will always be better economic managers because most of us come from a business background. Most of us know how to manage money. We've started businesses. We've worked really closely. In my case with.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily true. That's just his perspective on that. I'm pretty sure a lot of Liberal Party members now haven't even started a business before. They've just been in Parliament their whole life. So I don't know how well you can be at managing money when that's the case. But anyway.
With Peter Costello and with John Howard. And part of the reason that the economy is suffering at the moment is because there are now 4 budgets where the government has made decisions that have just made life much harder, and people feel that in their own household budgets.
When we talk about that tax on assets of a superannuation fund, I feel as though I'm playing a game of Monopoly and I just landed on the chance square and I've lifted up my chance card and it says pay tax.
Yeah.
It's like a prosperity tax.
Yes.
It's like I've been prosperous for the 12 months as a result of the advice that my advisors give me as to what I should be buying, investing, has done well. As a result of that prosperity, you're going to pay tax. It doesn't mean I made the money. I didn't earn the dough. It's not too different what Dan Andrews put into Victoria for farmers who have had their land rezoned, where the land's gone from being a farm worth one price to being rezoned for housing and become much more valuable. And Dan Andrews went and taxed them before they sold them. These poor bloody farmers have been forced to sell their property to pay the tax.
That's right. They haven't got the cash, the lazy cash sitting around to pay the uplift tax like that. It's and I mean this is a really interesting point as well because
it's just disincentivizing hardworking Australians. Like those farmers might have not wanted to sell that property even though it's been rezoned. But because of that, $100,000 maybe tax that they have to pay, I don't know how much it would be. They have to sell now just to get the income to pay the tax, and then they have to. Whether they shouldn't have to pay capital gains tax, but yeah, it's just bullshit on that. Like that's just picking on a crowd of people and just hammering them. And I'm gonna be after this video, I'm gonna be making another video on the farmers again in Melbourne. So fucking Melbourne must hate farmers, eh? Anyway,
if Labor's logic is that can apply within superannuation, well,
also make sure to subscribe, guys, and comment down below.
Outside of super.
Yeah.
So if you've
That's
got, it's really scary, but it would generate them a lot of money. People would pay a lot of tax. And again, I sort of bring it back to the basic point that if you're a tradie and you're getting, however much a week, $1,000 a week, you're being asked to pay the tax man the $200 a week before you get the 1,000, or before you get the 800. And it's wrong in principle, and it discourages investment, and it undermines the certainty about investing in this country. And that's exactly what we've seen in Victoria, where businesses have just pulled money out. They've gone to Adelaide or they've gone to Sydney or Brisbane, and they're employing workers there. And the Labor Party's devastated the Victorian economy, and a lot of Victorians are very angry about it, and rightly so.
It's very interesting. I've got quite a lot of branches down in Brisbane, Victoria, and I used to go down there and they'd always say to me, Dan Andrews this, Dan Andrews that. And then I used to say, but how come he keeps getting in? But now what's interesting, the mood has completely swung against Dan Andrews and his successors in Victoria in terms of Labor Party, like completely swung.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right.
And because people eventually worked out that Andrews was just running the joint into the ground. And he was a big spender, like a massive spender. And now he's turned the place into a tax haven for government. And what I mean by that is not tax haven for consumers, but government there, like the property market in Victoria has suffered because if you own an investment, you pay land tax on the first after the first $50,000 valuation.
Yes.
Whereas New South Wales is something like 1.15 or something like that, 1.15 million. And the house price is going down. Real estate investment down there is at an all-time low. As a result of that, less people buying houses. That means
Yeah, it's crazy. Queensland, Brisbane is way more expensive than Melbourne. That doesn't make any sense. Melbourne, you have all the fucking transportation methods. Like you can actually get around the city without needing a car. You got all the culture, the food. It's a 24-hour city. Brisbane's a shithole compared to that. But it's way more expensive because I guess there's less taxes, you could see the real-time effect of that. Melbourne used to be always the second most expensive city behind Sydney, or something like that. And now Brisbane has overtaken Melbourne because investors and people don't want to work down there. They would rather work in Brisbane where it's less. Originally it was cheaper and less, restrictions on what they can do and how the government is taxing them.
less stamp duty and they're getting into a bigger hole and the hole's getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Do you see that? Is that a mentality? Is that a Labor Party mentality? It eventually gets them?
It is. It's a jealousy thing. And it's, if you have a look back through the history of this country, where there's only so much tax that people who work hard can pay. And you get to a tipping point where they say, you know what, I'm just withdrawing my effort and I'm not going to build that house or I'm not going to build that block of units. And it's almost what's happened in the construction sector with the involvement of the CFMU. I mean, the CFMU's donated about $12 million to the Labor Party since Anthony Albanese became leader. And so they've let the CFMU just run riot in the building sector. Productivity's down to about 2.5 days a week, which means it takes twice as long and twice the cost to build an apartment block. And in Victoria, all of that capital is being withdrawn and moved to other states, to New South Wales, for example, as you point out. And at a time when we should be seeing an encouragement to invest into, say, housing, when we need more houses coming online, people are just saying, well, the taxes are too great, and I'm just not going to be this sort of soft target any longer. And my point before about if it's logical for Jim Chalmers and Anthony Albanese to tax you in that way in superannuation, why not in your other investments, and why not on your house? If your house is worth more than $1 million and my house is only worth $500,000, then the logic is that you should pay tax so that I can be subsidised in another way. I mean, that is just socialism. It's withdrawing the the encouragement, the incentive for entrepreneurialism and for people to invest and grow their businesses. And that ultimately means that less taxes paid, more public servants, become employed. And a lot of that's happened over.
Yeah. Eventually, the government, it sort of seems like Australia's going down that path of the government's going to be the biggest employer and is going to be the only way to make money. Like, they're going to take your money and they're going to pay you. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird way. Like, I can understand that capitalism has its flaws and socialism has its flaws, but the thing I like about capitalism is, if you put in the effort, if you work hard, if you find a loophole or a strategy or something that you're really good at, you can succeed at, and you can make more money than someone else. That's what I like about capitalism. Obviously, it has its flaws that, like, I feel like we're at the late stages of it. So me as a young person, it does feel like sort of an uphill battle to get to where I want to be. But I'm happy to go up that battle and, give it a go. But I don't want to just work for nothing, like work to be the same as everyone else. That just seems a bit not the way I was brought up. But anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.